What's going on, guys? On yet another live Tales from the Comments, we're going to be talking about your best theories regarding this comic book. Some of them are pretty interesting, and a couple of them are a bit strange, but you know what? We're going to talk about it. So the very first thing that I want to do is clear up a little bit of confusion that may have happened with that second video that we did. So if you hadn't watched the very first video, it was a three-part series. The first one I talked about, how the Killing Joke, there's a misconception that the Killing Joke was never meant to be canon, but it actually was, always, from day one, meant to be in continuity. And so a lot of you guys commented that, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in case you hadn't seen that video, in case you missed it before watching the second half. So yeah, go back and watch that. I lay it all out there, so hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But now let's dive into the actual comments about your actual theories. We're going to start off with the amazing guy, who leaves an interesting comment that a lot of you guys kind of brought up as well, which is, maybe Batman really did get stuck by Joker's poison needle at the end there. So if you remember, the main theory that Julian Darius was saying in his book was that Batman stumbles across the poison needle and he looks at his hand and, he kind of gets upset that he almost got stuck by it. But a lot of you guys, including the amazing guy here, says, well, what if he really does get stuck by that needle? And that's why he breaks out in laughter at the end of the comic book. Very uncharacteristic of Batman to break out into laughter. And maybe that's the reason why. Maybe that's the explanation, and maybe perhaps a couple of you guys even went further, saying, like, I think it was Ivan Fuentes, sorry, I'm going out of order, but he was saying, well, maybe the light going out is Batman actually dying, and what if, the inmates in the story were flipped around, so it was actually Joker was the one that escaped the asylum, and not Batman. Batman was left behind, and Joker was like, no, come on, man, make it to freedom, make it to the freedom of madness, of insanity, and Batman was too scared to make that leap. So it's kind of a little bit of role reversal there. So to answer this, Julian Darius kind of outlines this in his book, and he says that, well, we can kind of assume that Batman doesn't get stuck by the needle because we've already seen the needle being used earlier in the comic book on the park owner, and when he gets stuck by it, his transformation and apparent death are almost immediate, like within seconds. And we know that Batman went on to fight, to continue to fight Joker, to have a lengthy conversation with him before the needle affected him in any sort of way. So maybe that could debunk it, but then again, we have people like Mr.ghost who point out, well, maybe, Batman underwent some sort of poison resistance training as well, much like Joker, so maybe it does affect him, but a little bit slower to do so, and that's why it took him a little longer before before reacting to that poison needle. So I don't know. It's an interesting theory, and again, I think it can be debated both ways. I don't know. It's interesting to see that it kind of sparked a cool debate there. And we also have another one from Panthers fan 711 who goes on, continues on this poison needle theory to say that there's a panel in there that almost clearly looks like Batman is holding a needle in his left hand. But, and Julian Darius, to keep on plugging that beautiful man, actually makes a point about this too, about how, well, if he were to pocket it, it would have been in his right hand, not his left, but that panel does serve as like a symbolic reminder. Not a literal, here's the device, but more of a, remember guys, Batman has this thing, it's gonna come into play later, this is a visual representation of like the idea of it, but it's not the actual thing, not yet, which is pretty interesting. Again, I really recommend checking out his book, And the Universe So Big, super great, and we're gonna actually move off of the poison needle theory for a little bit here, because I think we maybe did that one to death. So we have one from Keenan Meyer, who says maybe it's not a needle, but maybe that scene where he's looking at his hands almost resembles a similar scene that we saw in Killing Joke, where very early at the beginning of the story, Batman is going to talk to Joker in Arkham, and he kind of rubs his hand and his face, and he notices that there's makeup coming off of it. So it's not the real Joker, but you see him staring at his hand, but from that point, it was the first-person perspective, whereas later in the comic, we saw him kind of a third-person perspective, of that almost that same shot, just staring at his hand. And so maybe a couple of you guys on Twitter even pointed out, maybe this Joker is still not the real Joker. We don't know. And I mean, I think there's something to that. It might need to be developed a little bit better, a little bit further. But it is really interesting to think about that maybe there are just like hordes of fake Jokers, and maybe there is no real Joker. I don't know. Maybe we're just stretching things a bit too far. It's up to anyone at this point. The last one that I want to touch on comes from Annoying Nerd. I'm just going to go ahead and leave this one on the screen for a bit because I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this. Well done. Yes, claps. So the very last thing I want to talk about is just props, huge props to Julian Darius himself, who has a name that I struggle to say every single time, but I love the man. He even retweeted the video and even messaged me and was like, hey man, thanks for doing this. You presented it really well. Would you be interested in like the rest of our publications? And I was like, yes. Yes, I would. Absolutely. So maybe we'll do some more videos about those in the future after I get to reading them because they seem super interesting. So super classy dude. Once again, make sure to check out his book and the universe so big. It has way more information about his interpretation of the Killing Joke that I did not go into in the video. But of course, you can always check out all the videos over here. Here, I was right. It was this way, right? Yes, over in this sidebar area. I think that may do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. And what do you think about any of these interpretations? Do you think the poison needle theory is a bit stretching it a bit far? A couple comments were like, well, this is all just speculation. I feel like it's all speculation at this point. I mean, the story was left so open-ended that anyone can make whatever they want out of it, which is something we'll talk about in a couple weeks about authorial intent, so make sure you stick around for that. Links, as always, to all of the comments, if you want to add to them, are in the description below, and also the videos, of course, are down there too, like I mentioned earlier. So thanks, guys, so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.